This book, this story, Pegasus Bridge, this is a story about the night before the morning of D-Day. This story is crazy. In this video, I'm gonna show you how and why I painted this war scene on some studio furniture. I hope you enjoy it. This is the first time I've ever tried to execute an idea on a three-dimensional object. And for that to make sense, I need to give you a 20-second backstory. In another life, I was a full-time artist slash teacher of drawing and painting the human figure. And I had a couple galleries in Santa Fe and New York. I was on this path of becoming like a full-time gallery artist. And then I met another artist who was super fun to hang out with and super cute, and that led to marriage and producing little humans. At the time, my paintings weren't bringing in a reliable, steady, dependable income, and I needed to pivot so I could put some food on the table. Fast forward 13 years, and what they say about life and having kids and time is true. There's a time warp. It is a blur. And I'm trying to find a way to make drawing part of my life again. And I needed a place to store art materials. And once I picked that thing up, I was thinking, dude, this thing is white and blank. There's a story from World War II that I've wanted to talk about or do some kind of art piece for a long time. June 6, 1944, the day the Allies entered France for the purposes of pushing back and beating down the Nazi German military who controlled much of Western Europe. We know this as D-Day, the biggest land invasion in recorded history of warfare. A little less known piece of World War II history was that the night before, there was a small company from England who were tasked with being towed by bomber planes in wooden glider planes. Once they got past the French shoreline, they were let go and they glided from 7,000 feet for 5 miles using only a compass and a watch. They had no second chances. It was a super precise target that they had to hit. They weren't trying to hit a target, they were trying to take these bridges. If they couldn't get control of these bridges, the Germans would be able to send reinforcements to their positions on the beaches in Normandy all day long and probably make it impossible for the Allied forces to advance in a real way in Western Europe. At least at that time, on that day. They trained for this for 2 years. The guy who led this company, his name was Major John Howard. He would train these dudes at night and just get them super used to operating in the dark. D Company continued to work at a pace that bordered on fanaticism in order to earn the right to be the first to go. They say that night it was partly cloudy, so it was extra dark, and just as they were coming in to their landing zone, clouds parted and the moon did give them a little light. But once they landed, it was essentially a crash landing. They hit hard, the wheels on the gliders just broke off, and they were able to deploy a parachute out the back of the glider to help them slow down, but they were depending on essentially just crash into a stop. And it said that they hit so hard that the pilots went out of the front of the gliders. Everyone in those gliders was knocked unconscious for somewhere between 10 and 30 seconds. Once they came to, their training kicked in and it paid off because they were able to take these bridges within about 12 to 15 minutes. I started by making a template and sketching in possible compositions. I'm sucking at this. I'm sucking at drawing the character for this. if you're sucking at drawing, just know that that's kind of part of the process. What I ended up with, 2 figures. You have a horse glider back here, and then the bridge will be on the top here. And at the end of the bridge, there's gonna be a burning tank. A burning tank, you ask, why? After these dudes had claimed control of the bridges and like took out the gunner positions, so the Germans hear about this situation and they send in a tank. And what the British had as like an anti-tank gun is something called a PIAT, Projector Infantry Anti-Tank. And it was notorious for being clunky. It was shoulder fired, known for being pretty unreliable. This is what the soldier, his last name being Thornton, and this is what he says about it. I was shaking like a bloody leaf. He could hear the tank coming toward him. The PIAT actually is a load of rubbish, really. The range is around about 50 yards and no more. You're a dead loss if you try to go farther. Even 50 yards is stretching it. Another thing is that you must never miss. If you do, you've had it. Because by the time you reload the thing and cock it, which is a bloody chore on its own, everything's gone. You're done. It's indoctrinated into your brain that you mustn't miss. And on that day, with his one shot, with his one chance, Thornton did not miss. This is the process of gathering reference material to give you information in terms of light and the way the light hits the form, the way that light hits the folds and the shadows work, the way light hits the face. I love the aesthetics of that time in history. Everything was heavy and made with intention. I would marry what I took in the photos and then study what I could from imagery from that time. Super not excited about trying to paint these characters on this like beveled edge surface of this dresser. I'd like for that surface to be flat if I could, if that's not too much to ask. I knew I wanted this painting to be kind of cartoony, graphic novel-esque. I wanted it to be more like a drawing with paint than a painting. But I still utilized some principles that image makers have used throughout history, and that is when you're drawing or rendering something outdoors, the objects and the characters in the foreground will have more contrast, more saturation, more dark values than the things in the background, and we call that atmospheric perspective. So why even tell this story? I've been drawn to World War II history for a long time, and I think there's something elemental and primal about that whole situation. It seemed that the world teetered on an edge and a generation stepped up. I think it's important to remember the character of those whose sacrifices that we live on the back of. In this story specifically, there was just this commitment to excellence and focus that is remarkable to me. I think that's going to wrap up this video. Leave me a comment down there if you have any questions about the process. I want to make this image into something that I could put on a wall, like a print. If you think that could be cool and that was something that you would like, leave me a comment about that. And we will see you in the next one.